Hey, what's up, guys? Gons here for the FaceLikeTheSun YouTube channel. So back in September, everyone was talking about what's going to happen in September, and there wasn't anything that seemed to be significant. But during the Pope's trip to America, we saw him bless pretty much this 2030 agenda. And we've been talking about it a little bit on this channel, but I want to bring some more attention to it because I think people are unaware of the significance of this 2030 agenda and what sorts of plans are in place for this sustainable development goal. Now, here's the website for sustainable development, and you can go here. I'll link to it. You can see all of the goals here. It's in a much more organized platform where you can, end poverty and hunger, ensure healthy lives, promote well-being, etc., etc. And there's all this wonderful stuff that they're planning to do. And of course, we have to be inhumane to go against such lofty goals of, driving peace and creating a world that is better and healthier and all this stuff, right? Well, at what cost? That's one of the questions I posed in some of my videos about 2030. And I think the methodology is laid out on this website and elsewhere. Now, to start off, if we go to goal number 16, it says, promote peaceful and inclusive societies for sustainable development, provide access to justice for all, and build effective, accountable, and inclusive institutions at all levels. And if you click on it, it'll open up a list of targets and, like sub goals, if you will. And again, as you go through the list, it's like, how can you be against this? But there's a couple here that really stood out. First off, 16.8 says this: broaden and strengthen the participation of developing countries in the institutions of global governance. So it's obvious now, they want global governance, period. And they don't think that we can achieve any kind of sustainable peace on Earth without global governance. But if you look at governance, more government means more corruption. We've seen that over and over and over again, yet they keep pressing on this idea of global governance. But number 16.9 is even more disturbing. By 2030, provide legal identity for all, including birth registration. And while it doesn't sound that scary or that nefarious, the reality is this is really a huge platform or a very gentle way of saying we are going to be tracking you in a way that is very invasive. Now, if you go to findbiometrics.com, and what this is a leading industry resource for all information on biometric identification and identity verification systems and solutions. And they claim that they have daily news reports from global biometric and identity management business communities and a comprehensive vendor list. And it's just a hub for this topic of biometrics. And they're very much in step with global governance, with the World Bank, with the whole UN 2030 system, okay? So when we go look at some of these articles, it becomes pretty obvious what's going on. Now, back in April 29th, 2014, there was an article that came out on this biometrics website. Morpho teams up with Intelligent X, markets rapid DNA identification. It says here, operating on FBI-approved chemistry, Rapid Hit is a solution that can generate DNA profiles based on submitted reference samples. It has applications in lab settings and on all ends of crime scene investigations. And basically, this is going to be a platform where your layman or, any sort of law enforcement will be able to access a large DNA database very easily, very quickly. And on that front, just recently, October 13th, 2015, so about a month ago, Rapid Hit DNA identification, a hit with UK police. So now it's been implemented, and it says here, Intelligent X is celebrating a new milestone in the use of its Rapid Hit DNA matching system. UK police have used it on their 500th arrestee, the company has announced. And it's kind of misleading, at the very top there, because the last paragraph here says, while it's worth noting that the system only provided 17 matches with the NDNAD, which is the national DNA database, of the 500 arrestees identified, it's evidently worth the cost of the system simply to get to those results much faster than traditional systems. So it's about speed. If you watch like old CSI episodes, they're like, oh, it takes at least 3 weeks to figure out what's going on with the DNA. Well, now they got a whole database. As long as they have your DNA or someone's DNA in that database, they can access it. And the goal here, going back to the whole sustainable development goal here, by 2030, provide legal identity for all, including birth registration. This is part of that system here. They want to create a DNA database. And somewhat similar to Minority Report, if they have your DNA in the system and you commit a crime or you're about to commit a crime, or the next step to this, which is basically biometric identification or biometric tracking, even neuro tracking, which, is the next step here, where they are reading your brain and they sense that you will commit a crime because your brain waves are doing a certain thing or whatever. Well, they can arrest you. And guess what? Global peace, right? Because crime rates have gone way down. Now, to show that this is just the tip of the iceberg here, back in May 19th, 2015, UN agency selects Accenture for Refugee Biometrics Project. The United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, the UNHCR, is moving forward with its plans to use biometric technology to identify and track refugees and has selected a vendor for the project. Accenture, an international technology service provider, has won out in the competitive tendering process and will oversee the implementation of the technology in a 3-year contract. Now, here's where it gets a little nuts, okay? The UNHCR will use Accenture's biometric identity management system for the endeavor. BIMs can be used to collect facial, iris, and fingerprint biometric data and will also be used to provide many refugees with their only form of official documentation. The system will work in conjunction with Accenture's Unique Identity Service Platform, or UISP, to send this information back to a central database in Geneva, Switzerland. What's in Geneva, everyone? Everyone together said CERN, the Large Hadron Collider, allowing UNHCR offices all over the world to effectively coordinate with the central UNHCR authority in tracking refugees. This is very interesting. So basically, the database that is at CERN, Geneva, is going to be a central hub for this identification system. And man, okay, my imagination goes a little wild here. This is obviously just my imagination, right? Obviously, we've been talking about CERN. You've heard Anthony Patch talk about the connection with Saturn and these trapped demons in Saturn, right? And if they're released or whatever, what's the possibility of these refugees being the host bodies of these demonic entities that would come through some sort of dimensional portal from Saturn? Again, just my imagination going wild, right? Nothing serious here, nothing to see here, right? What do you guys think? Am I crazy? Well, some of you guys think I'm crazy anyway, so that's not a good question to ask. But in any case, moving on here, World Bank, Accenture call for universal ID. This is sort of a follow-up. This was posted on September 29th. Okay, at the end of September, right after the whole UN thing, right? Check this out. In a new report issued in collaboration with Accenture, the World Bank is calling on governments to work together to implement standardized, cost-effective identity management solutions. Okay, so in the very last paragraph here, moreover, the nature of the developments has required an economically feasible solution and has demonstrated that reliable biometric ID cards can affordably be used on a large scale. It offers hope for the UN's sustainable development goal of getting legal ID into hands of everyone in the world by the year 2030 with its Identification for Development initiative. So there you have it. And, they say that they just want biometric ID cards, and it says cards, but really, if we're talking about biometric identification, based on this very website, what are biometrics? At the most basic, biometrics can be best explained by breaking down the word bio as in biological and metric as in measurement. That is to say, biometrics are biological measurements, and it talks about fingerprints, facial measurements, the patterns that your veins make, and even the way you walk. All these characteristics and more are unique to you and you only. And if you go down here, they're just playing with this stuff. What kind of characteristics are measured by biometric technology? Things like facial, iris, fingerprints, and other physical details. You have other biological qualities, voice print, outward appearances. And here's what's even crazier. Invisible biometrics can be further refined to a subcategory of behavioral identification. The way that you interact with connected devices, computers, tablets, smartphones, can be measured, and a profile can be derived from the resulting data. New softwares can then compare the way you usually type, use a mouse, or scroll on a page with active inputs to see if malware or a fraudster has hijacked your device. Oh no, it's so scary. These hijackers using, guys, I mean, I don't think people realize how invasive this is. And, big businesses, Silicon Valley, they're embracing this like it's the greatest thing in the world. And I mean, this is the real deal, guys. And the point that I kind of skipped over real quickly with this last article from the World Bank is this idea of getting this ID in the hands of everyone by the year 2030. They're really pushing for Sustainable Development 2030, going back to this idea of providing legal identity for all, including birth registration as part of this Sustainable Development project. And the fact that the Pope said yes, the fact that the United States was grounds to really have the Pope bless this endeavor, we are really starting to see the end here of our sovereignty, at least in the United States. And of course, this is already being implemented in other parts of the world. But check this out. If you go to the actual World Bank website, back in August 25th, this was published. Identification for Development. This is worldbank.org, okay? I checked to make sure that this wasn't some sort of parody website or anything like that. Here's what it says. The overview is to provide legal identity for all, including birth registration, by 2030 is a target shared by the international community as part of the Sustainable Development Goals. The World Bank Group has launched the Identification for Development, the ID4D, cross-practice initiative with the participation of 7 GPCCSAs sharing the same vision and strategic objectives to help our client countries achieve this goal, and with the vision of making everyone count, ensure a unique legal identity, and enable digital ID-based services to all. This sort of information, guys, I really hope this is a video you share with friends and family that aren't really aware or awake about this stuff to really wake them up. I know that a lot of you guys watching this know this stuff already, but I think we've been saying it for a very long time. I mean, people have come before me. Obviously, I haven't been around for that long. People have been saying this for years, but we're seeing it happen right in front of our eyes. And this ties into transhumanism. This ties into, the mark of the beast, the image of the beast. It's all sort of coming together, and they're really trying to push this. If we go to this article here from 3BL Media, and actually I saw this preview on TV the other day. It's called Breakthrough. It premiered, I think, last week or this past weekend on November 1st was the first episode. But basically, National Geographic Channel premieres Breakthrough, new science documentary series from Ron Howard and Brian Grazer. Now, Ron Howard being a respectable name in the film industry, right? Everyone loves Ron Howard and all his movies. But basically, this series is going to follow 6 prominent Hollywood stars to each direct a documentary about a given scientific subject. And they include Ron Howard, Brian Grazer, as mentioned before, but others such as Paul Giamatti, Angela Bassett, and others. So this is really a public way of trying to push this idea. And of course, it's on the National Geographic Channel. That's no surprise there. And here's what this article says. Using research materials from both GE and the National Geographic Society, Grazer and Howard considered more than 100 scientific topics for the series, eventually landing on biotechnology, featured in Paul Giamatti's More Than Human, airing November 8th, neuroscience, featured in Brett Ratner's Decoding the Brain, airing November 15th, anti-aging technology, featured in Howard's The Age of Aging, November 29th, alternative energy, featured in Akiva Goldman's Energy from the Edge, airing December 6th, and water conservation, featured in Angela Bassett's Water Apocalypse, airing December 13th. Ultimately, while these episodes often feature exploration into the world's most pressing scientific corners, Grazer, Howard, and their team of directors felt a keen responsibility to demonstrate how the featured scientists' work offers solutions to these problems as well. So again, who provides the solution? Why did Howard land on biotechnology of all things? Well, I think it has something to do with the 2030 Sustainable Development. This is happening right before our eyes, and people need to start waking up. They need to realize what's happening. And ultimately, the bigger question of, hey, what can we do about this? Well, I mean, really, you cannot participate. That's one way to do it. But this should be a very effective tool for evangelizing, if anything, okay? Because the reality is the stage that's being set right now is the mark of the beast. And most people know or have heard of the mark of the beast. But to hone in here from about verse 15 of Revelation 13, and it, the false prophet, the second beast, was allowed to give breath to the image of the beast, so that the image of the beast might even speak and might cause those who would not worship the image of the beast to be slain. So what does that look like in our world today? I mean, if you think about the image of the beast, we've talked about how it might be this artificial intelligence system. Well, if it's something that lives on the internet, we can see how the worship of this image of the beast would be a central point of tying in the entire world globally. And then, of course, if you go to something like Cleverbot, right, which is just basically this online logarithm thing that, I guess you can ask it questions, it'll give you answers. Okay, whatever. But if you type in, "Are you Satan?" guess what the answer you get is yes. So, the internet being put around the world is really the grid for this image of the beast to function. And then, verse 16, and it causes all, both small and great, both rich and poor, both free and slave, to be marked on the right hand or the forehead, so that no one can buy or sell unless he has the mark, that is, the name of the beast or the number of its name. This calls for wisdom. Let the one who has understanding calculate the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man, and his number is 666. Now, again, I've pointed this out before, but this idea of small and great, rich and poor, free and slave, this speaks right into this global sustainability thing, where you start looking at some of the things here and hunger and achieve food security. This starts to really make the whole sustainable development thing transparent in what might actually happen with the implementation of this system here. End poverty, right? End hunger, achieve food security, and improve nutrition and promote sustainable agriculture. Well, tie that in with the whole biometrics thing. You can't buy or sell if you don't have the mark. You can't eat food. You can't buy food unless you have the mark. Same thing with the management of water. Same thing with energy. Ensure access to affordable, reliable, sustainable, and modern energy for all. This is all stuff that's part of the economy, and promote sustained, inclusive, and sustainable economic growth, full and productive employment, and decent work for all. So I'm not sure how clear this can get. We live in a time, this is the first time in human history where this passage here in Revelation 13 that's been speculated and talked about for years about the mark of the beast, people have seen this coming, but this is really right now the time that this system can happen. And people need to realize that. Churches need to wake up to it. Christians need to become aware of it. And if you're not a believer, you got to consider this. Think about what's going on here. This was written 2,000 years ago, okay? This revelation came to John on the island of Patmos. He was on an island. How did he see this? Was this just something that he came up with? Was he on drugs, as some people say? Or is this actually the word of God? God showing mankind what's going to happen. And this isn't the end here. This is just the beginning. Those who take the mark of the beast and worship the image, God judges, and he doesn't really have anything good for them. And in fact, there is the potential of the changing of DNA of those who take the mark, and that's what makes them unredeemable if you look at other passages about the mark of the beast in the Bible. And again, I'm not the first to come up with that. I'm not trying to say I'm the first to say all these things, but we are seeing all this come together in a very alarming way. So please share this video with friends and family. Please take a look at the Bible. I know there's a lot in there. I know the book of Revelation can be confusing to people who just pick it up and read it, but understand the basic core of who Jesus Christ is, because ultimately Jesus is the one that showed us this stuff. He's the one that's going to put an end to it. And if we believe that what he did on the cross 2,000 years ago was really the blueprint for the solution, then we already have it. We don't have to be worried about this. We don't have to fear these things. We already have victory in all this. But it doesn't mean we can be complacent. It doesn't mean we can just sit around and say, well, God's going to work everything out, so whatever happens, happens. No, we still have a job to do. We are to be salt and light. We are to spread the gospel to the ends of the earth. There is a job for us to do, and we need to keep doing it. And when stuff like this comes out and the UN is trying to create this global system right before our eyes, we're talking 15 years, guys. It's almost 2016. 15 years they want to have this implemented, which means things are going to accelerate very quickly. And we're going to have to make some choices. We're going to have to make choices about the next piece of technology that comes out or whatever. We're going to have to be discerning and consider all of our decisions as these things roll out. And, of course, we can still make differences locally. And, in terms of being salt, it's to prevent decay. We can slow this down. I think actually we have slowed it down with our prayer, with the truth movement. I think we really did throw a wrench in the whole agenda to begin with. But nevertheless, they are headed for creating a global prison on a very tangible level. So despite all that, Christ is the victor here. If you don't believe in Jesus Christ, I ask that you seek him, seek God, and you will find truth in Jesus Christ, and the truth will set you free.